Casino Royale is a 1967 spy parody film originally distributed by Columbia Pictures, featuring an ensemble cast. It is loosely based on the 1953 novel of the same name by Ian Fleming, the first novel to feature the character of James Bond. The film stars David Niven as the original Bond, Sir James Bond 007. Forced out of retirement to investigate the deaths and disappearances of international spies, he soon battles the mysterious Dr. Noah and SMERSH. The film's tagline, Casino Royale is too much for one James Bond, refers to Bond's ruse to mislead SMERSH, in which 6 other agents are pretending to be James Bond, namely a baccarat master, Evelyn Tremble, played by Peter Sellers, millionaire spy Vesper Lynd, played by Ursula Andress, Bond's secretary Miss Moneypenny, played by Bouchet, Bond's daughter Mata Bond, played by Joanna Pettet, and British agents Coop, Terence Cooper, and the Detainer, played by Daliah Lavi. Charles K. Feldman, the producer, acquired the film rights in 1960 and had attempted to get Casino Royale made by Eon Productions' Bond film. However, Feldman and the producers of the Eon series, Albert R. Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, failed to come to terms. Believing that he could not compete with the Eon series, Feldman resolved to produce the film as a satire. The budget escalated as various directors and writers became involved in the production, and actors expressed dissatisfaction with the project. Casino Royale was released on the 13th of April 1967, 2 months prior to Eon's 5th Bond film You Only Live Twice. The film was a financial success, grossing over $41.7 million worldwide, and Burt Bacharach's musical score was praised, earning him an Academy Award nomination for the song The Look of Love. Critical reaction to Casino Royale, however, was generally negative, with many reviewers regarding it as baffling, disorganized affair. Since 1999, the film's rights have been held by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Pictures, distributors of the Bond films by Eon Productions. The cast includes David Niven as Sir James Bond, a legendary British secret agent forced out of retirement to fight SMERSH. Peter Sellers as Evelyn Tremble, or James Bond, a baccarat master recruited by Vesper Lynd to challenge Le Chevre at Casino Royale. Ursula Andress as Vesper Lynd, or James Bond, a retired British secret agent forced back into service into exchange for writing off her tax arrears. Orson Welles as Le Chevre, SMERSH's financial agent desperate to win a baccarat to repay the money he has embezzled from the organisation. Joanna Pettet as Mati Bond, or James Bond, Bond's daughter, born of his love affair with Daliah Lavi as the Detainer, James Bond, a British secret agent who successfully poisons Dr. Noah with his own atomic pill. Woody Allen as Jimmy Bond, or Dr. Noah, Bond's nephew and head of SMERSH under his Dr. Noah alias. Because he is red and mute in the presence of his uncle, he uses a pre-recorded voice, that of Valentina Daya, in some scenes. Deborah Kerr as Ancient Mibby, or Lady Fiona McTarry, a SMERSH agent who masquerades as a widow of M but cannot help falling in love with Bond. William Holding as Ransom, a CIA executive who accompanies the cross-spy agency team to persuade Bond out of retirement, then reappears in the final climactic scene. John Huston as M. McTarry, head of MI6, who dies from an explosion caused by his own bombardment of Bond's estate when the cross-spy and agency team visits. Well-established stars such as Peter O'Toole and sporting legends like Sterling Moss took uncredited part solely to work with the other cast members. O'Toole supposedly took a payment in a case of champagne. Producer Feldman originally approached Sean Connery to play Bond, but rejected Connery's offer to do the film for $1 million. Feldman originally intended to cast Terence Cooper as Bond and had him under the personal contract for 2 years prior to production. Feldman had worked with Sellers on What's New Pussycat and offered the actor a part as Bond. Sellers originally turned him down, saying he felt the image of Bond was too fixed. Feldman persuaded Sellers to change his mind by asking the actor to instead play a little man who plays Bond. Part of the behind-the-scenes drama of the production concerned the filming of segments involving Sellers. Screenwriter Rolf Mankiewicz declared that Sellers felt intimidated by Welles to the extent that, except for the couple of shots, neither was in studio simultaneously. Other versions of the legend depict the drama stemming from Sellers being slighted in favour of Welles by Princess Margaret, whom Sellers knew, during a visit to the set. Welles also insisted on performing magic tricks as Le Chevre, and the director obliged. Director Guest wrote that Welles did not think much of Sellers and had refused to work with that amateur, as he called him. Director McGrath, a personal friend of Sellers, was punched by the actor when he complained about Sellers' on-set behaviour. Some Sellers' biographies suggest that he took the role of Bond to heart and was annoyed at the decision to make Casino Royale a comedy, and he wanted to play Bond straight. This is illustrated in a somewhat fictionalized form in the film The Life and Death of Peter Sellers, based on the biography by Roger Lewis, who has claimed that Sellers kept rewriting and improvising scenes to make them more serious. In the end, Sellers' involvement with the film was cut abruptly short. Additionally, Sellers went absent for days and weeks at a time, refused to appear in scenes with Welles, and exited before all the scenes had been shot. As a result, Sellers was unavailable for filming the ending and other interlinking scenes, leaving the filmmakers to devise a way to make the existing footage work without him. Signs of the missing footage from Sellers' segments are evident at various points. Tremble is not captured on camera. An outtake of Sellers entering the racing car was substituted. In this outtake, he calls the car a la Pink Panther to chase down Vesper and her kidnappers. The next thing that is shown is Tremble being tortured. Tremble's death is also very abruptly inserted. It consists of a pre-existing footage of Tremble being rescued by Vesper, followed by a later filmed shot of her abruptly deciding to shoot him, followed by a freeze frame over some previous footage of her surrounded by bodies, noticeably a zoom in on the previous shot. For the musical score, Feldman decided to bring in Burt Bacharach, who had done the score for the previous production, What's New Pussycat. Bacharach worked over 2 years writing Casino Royale, and in the meantime composing after the Fox score, had been forced to decline participation in Love. Lyricist Hal David contributed with various songs, many of which appeared in just instrumental versions. The film features the song The Look of Love, performed by Dusty Springfield. It is played in the scene of Vesper recruiting Evelyn, seen through the man-sized aquarium in A Seductive Walk. It was nominated for Academy Award for Best Original Song. The song was revisited in the first Austin Powers film, which to a degree was inspired by Casino Royale. For the European release, Mireille Mathieu sings the different version of The Look of Love in both French and German. Woody Allen's scenes were shot in London. Producers delayed his final day of shooting so many times that out of frustration, Allen left the set and went directly to Heathrow Airport and flew back to New York City without changing out of his costume. Apparently, Allen was also inspired to direct his own films after experiencing the chaotic production on this one. Apparently, most of the stars were not aware when they'd signed on that this was a comedy spoof rather than a straight James Bond movie. In Guatemala, the movie is known as the movie The Night Before the Earthquake. It was aired the first time on the country on the 3rd of February 1976, hours before an earthquake that killed thousands. Now, to say this film is a complete and utter mess would be an understatement. This is possibly one of the most indulgent films ever made. At times the story is somewhat incoherent, and at other times it's just a downright mess. It's basically a conglomeration of gags and special effects, and it lacks any sort of cohesion or basic ideas of what comedy should really be. Yes, of course, this is supposed to be a parody of James Bond taking itself too seriously, but in the same breath, though, you still have to have a good, decent script. Look, some of the situations can be funny, and when you have a talented cast with Peter Sellers, for example, of course you're bound to get a laugh every now and again. But other jokes just seemed a bit too put on and are trying too hard. Look, there's some good ideas and some good scenes, and of course when you have a cast like David Niven, Orson Welles and Peter Sellers, well, you're bound to get something good out of it. I enjoyed the scenes up into the baccarat game between Bond and Le Chef. Afterwards, though, I found the film became repetitive, tiresome, and just filled with dull cliches, as the film tries too hard to put in jokes and outlandish gags. I mean, I suppose today it is sort of a curiosity that in 1967, at the height of James Bond with Sean Connery playing the lead role, that they decided to make this James Bond spoof, as it were. But unlike spoofs that came later on, namely the Austin Powers series, this film is disjointed. It's strange, it's erratic, and it's a testament to a waste of a lot of talent. It's a good idea on paper, but never really lives up to what it could have been. I mean, at the end of the day, when you have one of the largest casts ever assembled for a James Bond film, and have 5 different directors, well, what do you think's really going to happen? Look, I can understand where they were coming from. They wanted to capitalize off the Bond success in the mid-1960s. But instead, we are left with a dull, over-the-top comedy that is somewhat childish at times, and really just sort of goes nowhere, and wastes its incredible, talented cast. Casino Royale, 1967, gets a 5 out of 10.